Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, Coast to Coast. This Week in America. Barbara Melamed, PhD, is an award-winning author, board-certified health psychologist, and Harvard-trained mediator. Based on her own activism in the Gandhi International Institute of Peace and Mediators Beyond Borders, her highly praised POW, Peace Over War, using mediation and conflict resolution to reconcile international and logistical disputes, applies her Harvard Law School negotiation principles of mediation to 9/11, Kent State University killings, immigration and orphan issues, and today's racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic class injustices. PTSD, moral guilt, and soldiers is addressed throughout her clinical work and a review of scientific journals. She's the founder and director of Behavior Medicine Associates, a distinguished career with numerous accolades. She was former director of training at Tripler Army Medical Center, Hawaii's foremost military hospital, and worked with the VA's programs during Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and devotes volunteer work with our returning warriors and their families. Currently, she is a clinical affiliate professor at the University of Hawaii and former adjunct professor of John A. Burns College of Medicine. Barbara Melamed, PhD, author of POW, Peace Over War, using mediation and conflict resolution to reconcile international and local disputes, is our guest on This Week in America. Doctor, welcome to the program. A pleasure to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
This is such
an Coney Island, now living in Hawaii.
Yes,
this is where I was born and bred, Coney Island, New York. But now a Hawaii girl.
And now living in Hawaii and doing remarkable work out there. This book is receiving excellent reviews and is such an important book based on all of your expertise in dealing with conflict resolution. How did you become in activities related to war? Where did this begin for you? You've got a fascinating background.
Well, I was born after World War II, and my father was a chemist. He never had to serve in war. But as a youngster, my parents would leave the newspapers around, and they would talk about it, even though in hushed terms. And I started in high school. I was an exchange student in India. So I lived with foreign people who didn't speak my language, but we shared bread and butter and talk. So I learned that even though you can be a different color and a different culture, that we have more in common than we don't. And so my activism really began with Pete Seeger, who was one of the earliest.
Oh, yes.
And we were working on the issues that had to do with freedom and justice. We were working, actually, I had the misfortune or fortune of being in a number of awful places. I was at 9/11 when the towers came down. I was teaching at a Hispanic serving college, Mercy College, but they didn't have Mercy because when the ISIS blew up the World Trade Center, one of my campuses was right next door, and we lost about 1,300 young students.
Yes.
So my initial work as a faculty member was really helping them deal with loss. And as a youngster, I had already had some experience, in the civil rights era where I was at Camp Brotherhood. And we were learning how to make peace rather than war. And that does depend on prevention. And I think the problems that I just listened to President Biden, who said he's supporting Ukraine. The problem is you have to get in there before war happens.
Yes.
And we knew that was going to happen. You know, we saw Mr. Putin sitting at the end of a long table all by himself, not willing to negotiate. And I must say, I have adopted a Russian son from Russia when he was 15 months old. He had a USSR passport, and there was no longer the USSR. And Alex is now 27, and he just put Alexei on his driver's license, but he doesn't associate with Russia because he's angry at this war,
Yes.
as most of us are. Do you have a question?
Well, what I want to do is direct people to get information on your book. Our guest on the program today is Dr. Barbara Melamed. Let me spell that. Muhammad, but let me spell it for you. Melamed. And we've got that on the screen. We've got that, yes, the book covered there, and we've got the all this information on our website. Her website is Dr. and then melamed.net. That will take you directly to Amazon. You can order the book there, and we'll give you all this information as we go through the conversation, which will go by so quickly because there's so many important elements you brought out in your book. You do a nice job of laying your background, and you have been there at the forefront of all of these battles fought over all of the decades. And it's a remarkable reading, and from your perspective of how to prevent this, and you prevent this, as you were just saying, in a large sense, by doing something before it happens. What do you feel?
Compromise.
Oh, yes.
Compromise.
And you mentioned relationships.
Right. Not everybody gets everything they want, even in a marital fight or fight with your kid. You don't get everything you want. So on the national and international level, people have to listen to each other and talk to each other and, make agreements about both sides getting something good and also being able to come back to the table. If they don't like the way things go, they have to have the telephones available.
Yes.
They have to have the willingness to come back to the table.
Well, you talk about that in your book. You give ideas on how to stop the war before it happens. This is why this book is receiving rave reviews. It's POW, Peace Over War, book available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Her website, the doctor's website, drmelamed.net. And we'll have all the information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Is the book based on your experiences? And I ask you that saying that you went through some of your experiences to give us background. You know firsthand the problems of conflict and what happens when conflict gets out of control. So this is really based on a lot of your experiences, isn't it?
Right. And I was a middle child. You start right there.
Okay. That says it all right there.
But there are conflicts that haven't been resolved. The book doesn't end on a happy note. In fact, it ends on no compromise. Russia comes into Ukraine. But even here in Hawaii, we are having problems. Like Hawaii belonged to Native Hawaiians. It didn't belong to Americans. And when America came in, they didn't understand the culture of the Native Hawaiians. And we made a lot of mistakes. And even today, we have a big battle going on, and your listeners who are scientists will be interested. We want to have a 30-meter telescope on top of the highest mountain to prevent us from getting hit by drones, bad weather, earthquakes. However, the tallest mountain is called Mauna Kea, and that's a Native Hawaiian spiritual home. And so they certainly do not want this massive telescope with a lot of, so it's still a controversy unsolved. And I think that the book invites the reader and the teachers who use this book in their classes to come up with some solutions that aren't laid out easily in the book and to bring it home to their own problems that they may have on, land returning and the problem of homelessness. Whose job is it to feed those people and to house those people? Isn't that all of our responsibility.
Yes, and you bring all of this up. If you're listening and thinking this really has to do with country leaders who are trying to prevent wars, it's much more than that, isn't it? This is for the common person just going through the rigors of everyday life, the conflicts we face, the difficulties, the tragedies we face.
Jobs, yeah, losing your job.
Exactly.
Think about that does, but there are, also issues that are current, that the book gets right into what happened in the January 6th insurrection. So we also need to look at things like social media, Rick, even your show.
Yes.
I mean, we need to look at, are we teaching peaceful ways of coming together? I'm in a book club now with a wonderful leader, Rivera's son, and it's called The Way Between. And it's books for children in elementary and middle school to learn how to solve conflicts without resorting to hitting or bad mouthing. It doesn't help anybody. I also work with, I have the fortune of working with Obama's sister, Maya Satora, who started an organization called Seeds of Peace. And it isn't an S, it's a C for communication, collaboration, conflict resolution, to really start. And parents have to start. If they fight in front of their kids and there's no resolution, what do the kids take from that?
Yes, they mimic what they've seen, and they have sort of their approval that, well, this is the way adults solve these situations. So the book is really designed for everybody. There is so much there for everybody. The book is POW, Peace Over War, using mediation and conflict resolution to reconcile international and local disputes. Dr. Melamed is the guest, the author. Barbara's her first name, PhD. drmelamed.net is her website.
POW isn't even by accident, because I work with our warriors. I'm working with returnees from Afghanistan. I started with our Vietnam warriors, but now our Iraqi and our Afghanistan soldiers are coming back, and either they've lost a friend or they've lost their sense of righteousness because their job has been to kill other people. So we really have to deal, and in my clinical practice, I deal almost totally with people who have been traumatized. I don't know whether I wanted to share, but as a young mother, I was raped by a stranger, and that freaked me out, but it also gave me the courage to be who I am today. It gave me an understanding of what it's like to be traumatized.
You tell that story.
You need other people. You need connections.
Well, and you connect with people because you were through that. You're very open about what happened that night and the background of the, I understand, lived on the Manson farm, the person who was the perpetrator.
I was killed.
Well, yes, when you read that.
But the police were like crying when they took me to the hospital to get rid of, whatever they had to get rid of. He didn't injure me. I let him do it because I had 2 young children, and luckily my daughter, who was 2, knocked on the wall. I don't know if she saw it. And I said, my husband's home. And he jumped back out the window. But it certainly was a life-threatening experience. It turned out that he was a murderer. But even the criminal system then said, you're going to lose the case. Don't try to make a case against him. And he was allowed to be freed, and he eventually murdered somebody. So thank God or whoever, I'm still here, and it has empowered me to help other people who've lost relatives, or even losing a baby. I work with a young Black man whose girlfriend gave birth to his named son, who came out, an unborn child. So all of us need to reach out to other people. And there are a lot of specialists. I mean, my book is good for nurses, doctors, priests, because spirituality is an important component.
With us on the program is Dr. Barbara Melamed, PhD. That's Melamed. Her website, drmelamed.net, Melamed. You go there, you'll find information on the book. The book is POW, Peace Over War. How can people learn to mediate conflicts, whether at home, between themselves, maybe in the workplace, and even in foreign policy? Just some basic tips for all of us. I don't think we've ever lived in a more polarized time than we do right now. Everybody is ready to fight with everybody else. How can we mediate conflicts and maybe bring this back to a little more level of saneness?
Listen to the other person. Empathize with your so-called enemy, even if it's your 10-year-old son. Find out what is needed to take away the flames of the fire that's happening. And then sometimes bring in a neutral person who's not involved in the conflict. Like the president of Turkey, Erdogan, is trying to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. And maybe he's making some progress. We don't know exactly what happens behind the scenes. But coming back to the table with a resolution that both sides get something, not everything, and that somebody can watch whether the agreements are taking place. And if they're not, what went wrong? And how can we change those agreements so that we have a better ending? You know, we all like fairy tales where it ends happily ever after.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work out that way in real life. And Dr. Melamed has been through situations of her own. You talk in the book about where you were when you were an activist at the time. JFK is shot. 9/11, you mentioned that. The Kent State killings, you were there as that was unfolding in front of you.
Why was God putting me at all these places? Maybe because I had a gift to help people. When the Kent State killings took place, we were protesting the Vietnam War, and I was a faculty member at the time. Two of the students who were shot dead were students of mine, and I had put a flower in the gun barrel of one of our protecting military. We always use firearms to protect. We got to have another solution. But two of the people who were killed at Kent State, two of the students were just walking to campus. And it was a very hard time for all the students to come together. And me as a teacher, I had actually let my psychology abnormal class out when the police came to the campus. So I feel a little guilty about what role I may have played in the horror that occurred to two students who did not survive the Kent State tragedy.
Are we making any progress? That was a peaceful demonstration that turned into this ugly scene, and it's flashing before my eyes as I'm talking. It was like it was just a few weeks ago when this happened. And the shock that everybody had living in Ohio at the time, but throughout the world, like, how could this happen? A peaceful demonstration turned into mowing down these innocent students. Are we making any progress, do you feel?
I think we are. I think a lot of it depends on, in the schools, it depends on the teachers having, talks about what is it that's upsetting, whether it's losing a football game or not. But at the higher levels, we now do have NATO, although Russia doesn't like NATO. NATO is bringing together the strength so that a country can't come in and try to take over other countries. The Soviet Union, when it was in existence, they already took over large parts of the Crimea.
Crimea, yes.
Is now a Russian. And, the people have to adjust, whether they're Russians or whether they're Ukrainians. Their houses have to be rebuilt. They have to have faith in the future. And that's where the ministers come in. They really do. And, POW also is like prisoner of war. We have to help our soldiers because our soldiers are our fathers and our uncles and our brothers.
Yes.
Even if they survive the war, they can't talk about what they did. There's a sense of what we call complex PTSD, where it isn't just the anxiety of what they went through, but the shame and the guilt about what they were doing.
So many levels, and the time has gone by so quickly, and we need to do more of these. Our guest on the program is Dr. Barbara Melamed. Her website, and I'll give you all that here in a second, so get ready. And her website, healthpsychologyhonolulu.com. Book available at Amazon, POW, POW, Peace Over War. I got a couple minutes left, and it's not fair to ask you to to come up with world peace in 2 minutes at the end of a radio program, but I'm going to try anyway. What do we do now? We did not stop the situation, Russia invading the Ukraine, when we knew what was going to happen. Now it's happened. Really, nobody has an end in sight. How do we reconcile? How do we get these sides to sit down and come up with what would be fair for Ukraine?
Well, at this point, it's in the hands of the political people, because earlier it could have been love one another. A lot of people in Ukraine have relatives that live in Russia.
Yes.
So there's a lot of commonality among the people who don't want war. And Putin currently is losing his power. My guess is that his oligarchs who provide him with the money and the support can no longer step up to the plate. Rick, I forgot your question, and I do appreciate it.
What do we do now? We're into it. We had this opportunity probably beforehand to resolve it, not doing it. You say now it's in the hands of politicians. That scares me on some level, because they all, to be a politician, want to keep getting reelected, and they don't want to show any weakness. So I don't know if they'll develop relationships. How optimistic are you that we can work out something?
I tend to be optimistic. I was a Brownie Girl Scout, and my parents always taught me to look at the positive. And the people in Russia were not in favor of the war. So we have to remember that people are people, and we have to step up to the plate and love one another. I mean, I think that was one of my Girl Scout things, that you have to love the enemy. You have to understand, and punishment and retribution and apology is important. And, at some point, forgiveness has to come into the picture, whether it's through your priest or your minister, or whether it's through your own sense. You have to forgive the other and try to start working together on things that would bring you closer together. And that's what humanity is about. And, pets help too. I have a dog named Abraham Lincoln.
Yes. Well, I love this whole concept of community. We all need to be together and to work on these
Exactly.
resolutions. We are out of time, Doctor. Where is the best place to buy the book? I mentioned go to your website, Dr. Melamed.
Amazon has it. And for $2, you can get an ebook. So it has all the photographs. One of the things that's nice about the book, and I know we don't have time to show it, is that I do show photographs. A lot of people don't like to read, and so you can see there's nothing X-rated in here.
No,
high school kids can have this.
Well,
there's nothing.
In fact, there is a classroom edition available that talked about younger people, and a great place to get them started, and a number of pictures. So each one will save 1,000 words, so you can read through it quickly. And the pictures are all very impactful. Dr. Melamed is our guest, Melamed. Doctor, hopefully we can do this again. It went by way too quickly. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the program.
And thank you for this opportunity. It's a really important topic.
And one that we can't do justice in a 20-minute segment, but we will do another one, and we will do it even more justice the next time. It's been
each of those who are listening in, think about the last time you yelled at somebody or had a fight with your boss. How could you have resolved that differently? And don't stop trying.
And then the next time you'll think about this before you actually yell at them and prevent this. So it becomes a habit after a while. Dr. Melamed, that's Melamed, PhD. The website, Dr. Melamed, I'll spell it for you, .net. All this on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back on today's program right after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.